how do you convey information in a way that the homeowner can easily understand?
Hey, welcome back to another HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan. He's Thaddeus. I'm Evan. We are going live today with David from Pica, and we're going to be talking about AI in the home services, how it's utilized, diving into growing trust with homeowners today, and how utilizing conversations with technicians, being able to transition to more of a value-based sales approach is really going to evolve, and how it can really help home service companies compete when it comes to the direct-to-consumer brands that are trying to come into the space and take over. So I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, and look, I remember having the conversation with David and talking a little bit about some of the things that they're doing in like AI and value-based sales, and really overcoming those barriers with the customer to be able to do more and better for them and enable a higher level of trust. So going to be a good topic, but of course today's episode would not be possible without our lovely sponsors, and in no particular order we have On Purpose Media, Elite Call, Chirp, and Free to Go. Actually, I lied, that is an order. I just read it off the bottom of the screen. So have you ever thought about outbounding your databases to fill your dispatch boards with lucrative service and sales appointments and boosting memberships too? Well, enter in Elite Call, a US-based call center that does just that. For over 20 years, their dedicated teams don't just make calls, they directly integrate appointments into your CRM and fill your dispatch board. So don't let your competition get ahead. Let Elite Call connect with your customers first. Visit elitecall.net to learn more.
Awesome. And on the topic of AI, we have Free to Grow. Tired of dealing with after-hours call centers that struggle to get calls on your dispatch board with lackluster results? What if you could cut your customer acquisition costs in half? With Free to Grow, you can do just that. Their AI after-hours booking services, they have completely customizable scripts for your business that they directly integrate into your CRMs with Service Titan, House Call Pro, Jobber, Field Pulse, and Service Fusion. And on average, their AI answering service is booking 82.5% of after-hours calls directly into your dispatch board. Don't believe me? Call 757-550-3534 and test it out for yourself. After the call, you're going to get a text message, the exact same text that your technicians would get when they're doing the after-hour service, including the call recording and the summary of the call and what it is that they can expect when they're running it. Go to freetogrow.com. That's free-2 grow.com to learn how to get started.
Cool. Well, if you ever wanted to transform your home service business with Chirp, you can, because they are the ultimate automation toolbox. It helps you capture more leads, connect instantly, and that speed to lead things big, and skyrocket your sales. It integrates directly into platforms like Service Titan, House Call Pro. It offers unlimited or automated text messages, rather. I'm sure unlimited, but you got to pay for it. So offering automated text, emails, and even ringless voicemails. Boost your Google reviews too, and also increase customer loyalty with their proven rehash programs. Getting jobs on the board in the shoulder season, important. Schedule your demo with them today and get an exclusive 25% off your first 3 months. Visit them at chirp.com/HSSR.
And last, but certainly not least, enhance your online presence with On Purpose Media, your go-to home service marketing experts for everything web design, SEO, and PPC. They build stunning user-friendly websites built to convert visitors into phone calls. They'll enhance your visibility on Google with effective pay-per-click ads, minimizing that wasted ad spend. Let's turn your online presence into a lead-generating powerhouse. Visit onpurposemedia.ca to start your digital transformation today.
What up, David?
Hello.
Welcome.
How you doing, man?
Good. It's a beautiful summer, kind of to fall day here in New York. So it's the sun is shining. It's a little bit chilly. I actually really like it. Seeing the leaves change color is always a blast.
Yeah, I think the fall is one of the most gorgeous times of the year when you have all those colors and everything doing it. It's just, it just sucks that winter follows it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to get cold here and rainy.
Yep.
Yeah, we get about 2 weeks of fall, and then all of a sudden it's cold again. So it's
brown everywhere. So
very brown.
Well, welcome, David. Why don't you walk us through a little bit of your journey into the trades and getting started with Pica?
Totally. Yeah, and thank you guys for having me on today. So, super quick backstory. My background is not in the trades. Never been a contractor. Not an expert in that side of the house. I actually started off as an AI researcher at Stanford. I thought I was going to go do a PhD, become a professor, lead a lab. I loved that idea of just building cool stuff and not really having to answer to anybody, but conferences and things where you could show what you're working on. I had the misfortune though of graduating in 2020, right into COVID. Did my last quarter of school at home with my parents, and as much as I love my parents, wasn't really feeling the at-home school vibe, and ended up realizing that I wanted to push off those PhD dreams for a little bit. Ended up commercializing some of my research, spun it onto a company, learned a lot about company building, but realized that that wasn't the right fit for me. Ended up joining Google, had to pay the bills, was a product manager there for about 2.5 years. And that's actually kind of one of my first steps into the trades. For context, my dad had worked for an HVAC and appliance manufacturer for many years. So growing up, always was tinkering around with things, appliances. I mean, really, really annoyed my mom, but I kept taking apart things in our home because I was just curious about how the refrigerator worked, how our AC worked. But I actually got firsthand experience working with contractors and with HVAC because I joined a very small team within Nest. I know it's a bit controversial in the HVAC world for many reasons, some of which I agree with. And I was specifically focused on leading a lot of our utility partnerships. So working with utilities, working with contractors, our Nest pros, learned a lot about the good and bad about technology in the home services world, and realized that there was actually a very meaningful opportunity to go and build out a technology company in the space. So ended up leaving Google just over a year and a half-ish ago. Actually packed my bags up, quit in San Francisco, moved to New York literally the next day, and then started Pica with one of my best friends.
Wow. Nothing like just jumping off the deep end and going right forward, right? A whole move across the
Straight
country.
off the deep end.
What was that like? I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, and I mean, like most of our audience is already business owners. And so they're like, okay,
Totally.
well, I just made the move anyways. But I still like to ask the question for those that might be listening and are thinking about running a business. What was the biggest push for you to be like, all right, fuck it, let's just go. I'm going to move across the country and start this business, quit my job?
Absolutely. I have this belief that, at least at this point in my life, right, I don't have a mortgage, don't have kids to take care of, or anything else really to take over my entire life and my kind of mind share. And as a result, I want to be on this kind of exponential learning path, right? Every year, every day, I want to be learning more than I learned the previous day. And at certain points, right, you can join a job, you learn a lot, you love the job, but then you start plateauing. And in 99.9% of jobs that you reach that point. And at some point, I realized that there isn't going to be a job where I can keep learning in this exponential way. I have to just go and figure things out myself. I mean, figure it out the hard way, figure it out just by directly going and doing it. So that was really honestly what made me take this leap of faith. I knew that I kind of live my life also with this belief that when I'm 80, I have grandkids, talking to them, I don't want to kind of regret not doing anything in my life. This idea of like a delayed life plan doesn't work with me. I wanted to just go all in as early as possible, give it my best shot. Whether I win, whether I don't win, I'm still happy that I gave it a good run.
No, a very real thing. I remember the advice that my dad gave me 10 years ago, a decade, was literally the same things like that. You have a mortgage, that you have roommates that are paying most of it. You have no other debt. You have no other expenses. You don't have a girlfriend. I got a girlfriend at the time, but it's like, you're not married. Like there's nothing else. It's like, well, why not take this opportunity now? Because so what if you lose 6 to 12 months of your life and maybe a year's worth of earning? You can recover.
Totally.
And I think people think, I mean, they get lost in analysis paralysis all the time. So glad that you made the choice and dove in.
Yeah.
Well, and that's Robert Kiyosaki has a quote too. He says, if you're going to go broke, do it before 30, right? So bet on yourself early, go all, just give it a shot, because what's the worst that can happen?
Fuck, I was 29 when I did that then. Whew, just in case, just under the wire.
Just in time.
Right.
So the vision for Pica, how did that start while you were still in school? Because obviously for you, or I guess while you were at Google, because you had this friend that you wanted to start the business with. You moved across the country the day after you quit. So obviously there was some building, some momentum that was getting created, some ideation. What were the problems that you were looking to solve?
Absolutely. So before I answer that question, just at the highest level, what we want to build here at Pica is this kind of one-stop shop, this platform for what we call the front office of home services. And by front office, I mean everything that is homeowner facing, everything that is kind of customer facing. You know, there's amazing tools that automate a lot of back office processes, inventory management, dispatch, CRM. When it comes to that kind of in-person relationship, what I noticed, and as we were working with contractors during my time at Nest, it was actually, this was kind of nuts. I've really never seen another industry like this that had gone from pen and paper sales, right? Even just 5-10 years ago, to digital sales, and then now back to pen and paper, right? We were seeing shops doing 50 mil plus in rev a year that were going back to printing high gloss 10-page booklets that they would use, or even trying to buy dry erase boards that they could customize to bring into the home. And in kind of the 2020s, right, it was almost nuts to me that was best in class, right? So that really kind of sparked the initial idea of, hey, there are some really big pain points. Sales is, at the end of the day, what ends up driving the vast majority of business for a contractor. It is crucial, and especially around replacement sales, upsells, recurring revenue from maintenance plans. Those are all crucial to the long-term success of any contractor business. And as a result, we decided, hey, this is the thing we want to kind of devote our time towards fixing. And then over time, obviously, the platform has expanded. Happy to talk about that more later on the pod.
Mm.
Well, and in terms of the customer experience, it's something that we've talked about almost ad nauseum when it comes to how home service companies can really separate themselves, because trust is such a big thing. You know, there was just the 60 Minutes episode that came out last night regarding roofing, right? So trust is a huge issue that companies have to overcome. And there's been many different episodes, 60 Minutes. And what was the other dude that did an episode on HVAC contractors that came in and they couldn't just connect the wire and they were misdiagnosing the AC system.
And it was, wasn't it like the CEO, not CEO, Worry or Gold Medal Services was like one of the ones that's like Mike Aguilaro's old company. Yeah. I can't remember who did it, but I remember reading the article.
Yeah. So like trust has always been there at the root cause of where this where companies can really separate themselves in the industry. So how is utilizing a digital product going to help actually bridge that gap and build more trust when it comes to the customer experience?
Absolutely. It's a phenomenal question. And for what it's worth, right? Like the vast majority of folks we work with, I mean, everyone we choose to partner with, we believe to be really good people, right? At the end of the day, obviously every company wants to make money, but they're there to help, right? I've been on ride-alongs where someone's deeply uncomfortable. It's either too hot or too cold. Their AC's out, the furnace is out, and they just need a solution there, especially maybe they're a bit more on the elderly side. Contractors really kind of do actually, they help homeowners at the end of the day. And it's around how do you convey information in a way that the homeowner can easily understand, right? Your average person in America, well, if you say the word SEER2 to them, right? You say the word capacity of an AC system, you say the word BTU, like no one knows what that means outside, like when it comes to technical jargon, outside of someone who is in or at least adjacent to that industry. And as a result, I mean, I can speak to this as someone who did actually recently have a bunch of contractors in my home because my actually brand new AC system completely blew itself just a few months back. And I called 5-6 shops, right? They all came, they diagnosed the issue, but most of them were just scribbling on pen and paper. It almost reminded me of like a doctor's note. Like they just handed me paper, and thankfully I could talk to them because I knew at least a little bit about the technical implementation and the technical problem. But for the average homeowner, you just see that quote, right? You see that handwritten thing. You see a big dollar amount at the bottom that they're going to charge you for the fix, and you're kind of like, I don't know what I'm getting, right? And it's very rare in the world to buy something of that scale, thousands of dollars typically, and not have it be something that you fully understand. So it's that idea of like, we know that contractors and salespeople, comfort advisors, they're phenomenal at what they do. They're great at building relationships. They're great at diagnosing issues and finding solutions. But at the end of the day, they need to be supported by tools that help automate this like back of the envelope math on energy savings estimates or HRI lookups to get things like SEER ratings and quantify that in terms of impact on a homeowner's efficiency and likewise their bills, determining things like even how loud is this unit outdoors, right? These are all tasks that are crucially important, but people don't have time to do, right? And it's painful to do it in front of the customer. So if we're able to provide contractors with a toolkit of information, they can pick and choose what they show and what they present to the homeowner, but that just inherently kind of level sets on trust because it's easily understandable, and then the contractor can then add their own personal flair on top of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Hard to say without the visual aspect of it. So
I hear
with
you.
them being able to control what information is being shared and what's not, because
Mhm.
you said you like to work with good people, and people
Yeah,
are who have they're not looking to deceive customers, and I think that's a
totally.
majority of contractors. I think that it's actually the rare few that are bad apples, sort of say.
Totally.
Majority of people are not in that realm, and even when a contractor misses something like, oh, it was just a wire that was disconnected, it's more often than not out of trying to deceive them into, yeah, I think you just need a new AC unit and I'm just going to try and sell you shit that you don't need. More often than not, it's just a genuine mistake.
Totally.
um so if you are putting it in the contractor's hands or in the technician's hands of being able to decide what information to share versus what not, how is it that you can then build trust if they have that ability to decide what to share and what not to share?
It's a really good question, and there's a little bit of nuance here because they can use our platform when they're at the kitchen table, like kind of flipping through the proposal with the customer. And
Okay.
also, we know these days lots of multi-bid situations leave behind, so oftentimes they're actually sharing it with the customer, right? In that latter case, where the customer gets their own opportunity to go in and play around with a quote, uh, they actually the end consumer, the homeowner, has the capability to go in and pick and choose what they look for, right? And it's
Got
harder
it.
to kind of hide information if it is crucially important to a buying decision. But what
Okay.
one of our kind of theses, though, is when you're at the kitchen table, we know that every homeowner is different. Every contractor has their own selling style. And we're not here to tell you how to sell, right? Because we know that if we do that, right, maybe it doesn't resonate well with a particular customer. And if we hurt your sales ability, that's the worst case scenario here. So it's less around like you can control what you show and hide, and it's more of like you can choose your own adventure through that information, because at the end of the day, it's going to the homeowner. They can go and find that information if they want, but it's how you present it to them when you've got those crucial 20-30 minutes at the kitchen table. You get to choose. It's kind of a nuanced difference there, but I don't know if that makes sense to you both.
Oh, and it definitely does. You think about the age of the consumer, right? We live in a world where it's an educated consumer. They can find
Totally.
the information as you found, as you said. They can turn to Google and they can say, "What is BTUs?
Totally.
What is that? What is a 16 SEER system or whatever the SEER number is that at the time?" Well, they can find that information, but how much more powerful is it if you're the contractor, you're the business that gives them the opportunity? You're their Google source. You can give them
Totally.
everything. That breaks down that trust, and I think that's kind of what I gathered from a lot of it is you can empower them. So I guess in terms of the homeowner can play with it, the homeowner can look at it. I mean, now is it something that gets like sent directly to them via email? Because I know
Yeah,
myself as a consumer, I'm a researcher, right? I
I hear
shouldn't
you.
say I'm a researcher. I like to do my due diligence with certain purchases in certain instances to be able to find the information out. So if somebody sends me something like a quote, well, yeah, shit, I'm going to go look and I'm going to go play through that. Is that generally how you guys
100%.
are working it? Or is it email? Is it left behind? And what are you guys doing?
Totally. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there are some folks we work with who are phenomenal at the one call closes, right? They're in the home, and by the time they leave the home, there's a signed contract there. And for them, there's not even really an opportunity to
Right.
do a leave behind. And for many others, they typically actually like to do the leave behind. They're like, hey, we know that you don't want to make a decision right now, or you can't make a decision right now. We're going to follow up with you tomorrow, but you get a chance to talk to your wife, your husband, your kids, other decision makers, and we will follow up. And in those cases, that that proposal that they build in our platform gets sent out by email, by text. They have the option to choose which one. And one thing that we provide that we think is actually really, really compelling for follow-ups is today, right? If you actually do a pen and paper quote, you have no way of understanding what the homeowner is thinking, right? As they kind of look at that quote later that night at their dinner table. And if you send a quote from one of the existing FSMs today, right, the Service Titans, House Call Pros, Jobbers of the world, you will get a email notification if they've opened up the estimate, and of course if they've signed the estimate, but not much more, right? You don't actually kind of understand what is going through the customer's head, where they are in the buying process, what are they looking for, what are they concerned about. So what we've done is we've taken what is frankly best in class in the digital sphere, which is just really advanced customer behavior analytics. And most websites you go to today do this at scale, but we actually give you a video playback of how that customer is interacting with the quote. You can actually
Mm.
watch, hey, the customer is spending 20% of their time on the most expensive option or the cheapest option. They're toggling between the $9.99 plan and the 18-month no-no. they're concerned about financing. Maybe they're opening up the savings tab and they're looking at what's the projected impact on my utility bills. Maybe they're looking at the About Us screen and they care about your brand and your values and the guarantees that you can bring compared to maybe another contractor. And based on that, now when you pick up the phone to make that follow-up call, you just have so much more context and information, and we enable you to follow up with a lot more precision.
No, I love the video playback. It's like a heat map, right? I mean, in the
Totally.
website world, we put heat maps on our sites because we want to see where the consumers are interacting with in following down that
Absolutely.
chain. I guess maybe this is anecdotal because I don't know if you have the data across the board,
Mhm.
because it's kind of like, it sounds like it's almost a little customized per person. But is there one or two areas where you find impact the customer the most in having looked at the video playbacks?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the two biggest ones we see are, one, kind of energy savings. And I'm happy to talk about that in more detail because I think we take a fairly unique approach there. And then also that kind of all in cost page, right? So it's like, what do I actually owe out of pocket? And then if I take into account all of the tax credits, incentives, utility rebates, manufacturer rebates, like what is the kind of final price here? Because at the end of the day, in this day and age, people are very much price sensitive. We know the economy is tough at large, and as a result, people don't have $10,000-$20,000 typically out of pocket to just pay for an unexpected expense. So those are kind of the two we see the most of. Obviously, people are spending a lot of time on that good, better, best page because we make it really easy. And to kind of paint you a picture, maybe Evan and anyone listening, we have kind of the standard side-by-side view, right? I mean, we know Nexstar asks for 4 or recommends 4. People do anywhere from 3. We've got people selling 15 options side-by-side on our platform as well. It makes it really easy to compare them, right? So you've got obviously the price, the monthly price, but then you've got the SEER rating directly from HRI. You've got the capacity. You've got the staging of the system. You've got how noisy is it? What's the manufacturer warranty? And then when you're comparing side by side, it makes it easy to tell, like, okay, this is $2,000 more because of X, Y, Z reason. So that's kind of where we see people spending the most time.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And even, I mean, we were down new flat rate last week, and they
Totally.
said 5 options is kind of
Totally.
the biggest thing that they found
Absolutely.
via their research. But let's talk a little about the energy savings, because I think that's
Totally.
an interesting one to go down, and I think a lot of people miss
Yeah,
the mark on that to be able to show that. So, what have you guys
absolutely.
seen for the data, and why is it such a focal point?
Totally. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we know bills are high and also quite volatile, right? I think that's honestly one of the biggest things is there's just so much change unexpectedly in gas prices, electricity prices, heating oil, propane prices that, I mean, it can become a very large part of your monthly expenses as an average US homeowner. And today, when a homeowner kind of naturally asks, okay, I get a higher efficiency system, what's in it for me? What's the impact on my bills? Typically, what we see is a contractor will just go on to the carrier website, the Ream website. They would go and look at that model. And then typically there's like a 25% number, or there's a dollar amount, even sometimes number there. And they kind of just quote that. They're like, okay, that's what the manufacturer says. What we found, and from kind of a homeowner perspective, is that doesn't feel very defensible, right? It's like 25% of what? Or like, how are you getting that? Like, if they quote you save $1,000 a year, where are they getting that number from? How do they know what my bills are today? So we've taken a pretty unique approach in that we've actually explicitly realized that we can't predict the future. We've heard this so many times, right? Someone quotes a estimated savings. The homeowner comes back a year later with their actual utility bills, and they tell you, hey, I paid more money this year. Why is that? Why did I not get the 20% that I was quoted? And turns out later, like, they literally just left all of their doors and windows open. You could get the highest SEER rating system that you could ever want, and then just do many other things. Buy an electric vehicle, plug it in, all of a sudden your bill spike, right? There's so many other confounding factors. So what we do is we give you a retrospective estimate. We let the contractor define essentially what is the types of systems that are in place today, what's the kind of estimated efficiency. We even chart degradation of efficiency over time. It actually follows a cool mathematical formula. And then using that as a baseline and local historical weather, as well as local historical fuel prices, so electricity, gas, heating oil, propane, we can basically build a rough physics-based model of what a homeowner would have spent last year with their existing system and what they would have spent if they had upgraded to this new system last year, right? And we can actually give you the month-by-month breakdown of where those savings are coming from. We can show you the math, so it is defensible. It is like a homeowner season. It's like, okay, I see where this is coming from. And we found that to be really exciting because it for the first time, you actually can ground savings in at least closer to reality. right? Like
Yeah.
it will never be 100% accurate. Again, leave all of your doors and windows open, but it will be a better estimate in our minds.
Yeah, well, see, that just blows my mind when you think about that. Because like I've thought about the average fuel economies on vehicles when you buy it on the sticker and it's way off, or even the computer on your truck. Like I actually I physically calculated my fuel economy versus the computer on my truck, and it's different. Like I know, I mean, we do liters per 100 kilometers up here, at least I do, anyways. That 1 liter more per 100 kilometers is actuality versus the computer on the truck, and so it's just when you actually put in. That's just for my truck, my driving, my styles. I'm sure that everybody's might be different, but when you actually put that factual things in there, that's super cool. So, Evan, did you want to follow up on anything on there? Do you want to jump into the random question?
Yeah, one thing that I was curious on is when you're analyzing that data and you're providing that feedback back to a contractor in terms of these are the pages that people are spending more time on when they're making a decision. Is that based on all the people who are visiting the quote and seeing their quotes, or is that based on just the buyers and what their behaviors are? And I'll give you some context behind the question, because it was an article that I read, and they were talking about a landing page. And on the landing page itself, they had a video that was on there. Majority of the people who came to the landing page did not watch the video. So they took it off because most people didn't watch it. Right. And what they found was their sales went down by 80% because they made a decision based off of everyone who visited the landing page. But what they didn't realize was that the people who were buying were the ones who were watching the video.
That's so interesting. Yeah, selection bias, right? It's like depending on what data you use, obviously you can come with inconclusive conclusions, right? Like yeah. Oh man.
And so when you're looking at the people who are visiting the energy savings page and they're spending the most time on that, is that out of the totality of all of the people who are looking at the quotes, or is that the select few that are actually making that purchasing decision? They're spending the most amount of time on these pages.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal distinction. For context, what I was saying around people spending time on the final quotes page, like the upfront cost, the post-sale cost, as well as energy savings, that's across the totality. What I will say is the way that we framed the feature is that it is almost customer specific in the sense that we found that, I mean, broad stroke generalizations are helpful, right? Like we can give you trend data, but at the end of the day, every single sale is so different in a sense, right? Like everyone's motivated by slightly different things. And as a result, we found that this is most helpful on like a case-by-case basis. It's like, hey, Mrs. Jones has this quote. She spent actually all of her time on the financing section. Therefore, when I pick up the phone to call her, I will start kind of leading into a discussion around financing because I know that's important to her. Versus maybe a young couple, they've got a Tesla Prius in the driveway. They care a lot about the environmental impact, and maybe they're spending some time on that environmental impact slide. Then you can actually go in and really frame the follow up around that. So, it's a great call out that I think I kind of combine those into one. Like we do give trends data at large, right? I mean, we don't want to index too much on just sales because we also know that it is dependent on the actual salesperson, right? Like maybe the salesperson is spending different times in home. So as a result, the homeowner spends different amounts of times on different pages. But the follow-ups and the kind of customer analysis is on a case-by-case basis.
I love it. Oh, that's great. And so are you able to send that information directly to a contractor to say, hey, if you're following up with this person, this is where they spent the most time? Or is it on them to then go back and watch the actual video or the recording of how the customer is flipping through the proposal?
Yeah, so we flag it to them when the customers open the proposal, and it's just one click for them to go and actually view that section. But to your point, a lot of what we want to do and what we're working on right now, and actually where I see the value of AI is taking that kind of almost structured data, right, about what are they clicking on, what are they spending time on, and bringing more proactive insights around, to your point, like, are they looking at the most expensive option? If so, we should just call that out directly in the notification. But that is very top of mind for us right now and very exciting.
Oh, I love that. And especially from a marketing perspective too, it's
absolutely
understanding where people are spending their time and what matters to them is what's going to matter to the front end of the sales process, the top of the funnel, when people are starting to come in, so that we can provide that information up front. And 100%. Then it's going to lead to more coming through the bottom of the funnel at the end of the day. So yeah, I think it's phenomenal information.
I would agree, and I like the distinguishing thing of the broad strokes, because that was my question, was broad across the board, and I like the narrowness of it after the fact. So, well, let's jump into the random question, because well, that's one of my favorite parts of the show, where we ask you a question that has nothing to do with
Love
anything
it.
that we're talking about. So but it's brought to you by On Purpose Media, which is your local home service marketing experts. If you wanted a second opinion on your marketing, head over to onpurposemedia.ca/second. It's no obligation. We just give you the information on what you can do better, or if everything's banging, we'll tell you that too. So, all right. Do you want question 1, 2, or 3? And you don't get to know what the questions are. You just get to choose question 1, 2, or 3.
I'll do question 1.
Question 1. All right. If you could start a rumor about yourself,
Oh man,
what would it be?
Oh man, that is a good question. Honestly, I feel like it would be something kind of like crazy, honestly. Like, oh yeah, like just like backstory wise, like, oh yeah, David like grew up in living with polar bears in Antarctica and then kind of made it made it down. Like, I feel like those are the best rumors. I mean, I feel like there isn't really a rumor like either good or bad that is directly related to me that I would necessarily want to start myself. But I feel like there's always a little bit of funniness, and I've actually met a couple people who just like they're just so straight faced about it, and they convinced me about something about their background just in a lighthearted way, and I later come out to find out that they were absolutely that was completely false, and I always get a kick out of that.
Oh man, those are funny. It reminds me of the time back in the dating days when I successfully convinced somebody that dolphin waxing was a career.
Oh my
And that I traveled around to wax the dolphins in aquariums to be able to make them glide through the water better. And she believed it.
I love that.
She was also pretty drunk, so it was kind of funny, but tried it on somebody else. It didn't work. So
One
that's
time.
funny. Yeah, well, the one time that I had that conversation. So one of the things that we chatted about kind of briefly in the beginning, and we chatted about it one-on-one, is kind of the shifting tides in what's coming in terms of AI and, you know, broad speaking in that, in terms of the sales part. Obviously, we've talked a lot about that already. One of the things you'd mentioned was, you know, the big box, the little guys competing, and how that's looking in, I guess, your opinion on with the changing tides with big box entering into the marketplace.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot for the simple reason that I'm at the age where a lot of my friends are either buying or thinking about buying their first home, right? And I look at kind of the way that I grew up, which is digital first, right? Like everyone in this millennial and certainly Gen Z home buyer group, which is rapidly becoming that dominant homeowner home buying group, is so familiar. They almost like expect to buy everything online on your phone, one click, Amazon, right? Like people get angry if they don't get their prime delivery in exactly 2 days or sometimes even 1 day. Like it is almost just such a different buying experience. I mean, the average kid, I remember growing up, like I was scared to actually make a call on a cell phone because I was like, oh, I can just message them, right? It makes it a little bit quicker. I don't have to actually talk to anyone. And as a result, we found that like there is like whether you want to go all in on kind of direct to consumer or kind of this online buying experience, or whether you're a bit more hesitant about that, maybe you serve a demographic that is a little bit older, or that you found to want to have that in-person experience. I feel like it is worth thinking a little bit about how you will handle this shifting tide. I mean, we see the big box retailers, the Walmarts, the Home Depots, the Costcos of the world becoming that kind of almost top of funnel for contractors, right? At the end of the day, your average big box retailer, like it doesn't necessarily make financial sense for them to hire and scale a team of amazing contractors. It is hard to do that, as most of the folks listening now will know firsthand. And as a result, like it's this interesting mix of like, hey, do you want to get on the train as it's kind of starting to pull weight with the station? Do you want to kind of see how the world goes in the next couple of years when it comes to direct to consumer buying for things like HVAC systems, and then hitch a ride? Then I don't think there's a right answer, to be quite honest. But as someone who is in that kind of generation of home buyers now, like I will say it is a very compelling experience, at least to get some certainty about what you're buying, right? Like it's not like I'm just going to call someone, they're going to show up, and then I have no idea. They're going to spend 2 hours in my house, and I might leave with value add and a quote. Maybe they don't give me a quote. Like there's there's a little bit too much uncertainty today in my perspective.
Right. And it makes sense. I mean, you think about the instant gratification that people want, right? And that's what you're talking about there. And this just, we're such an instant gratification society that if something doesn't come right away, they get mad.
Yeah.
I think one area in which people could be able to differentiate themselves, and it's follow tell Paul in terms of contractor commerce or various other ones out there. There's Eden, there's a bunch of other ones where you can actually put a range of pricing on your website, because now, if you pair that with, again, this goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, was the whole educated consumer. Well, if you put pricing on your website, you give them the information, you give them the range, you put in a disclaimer subject to site visit, whatever you want to put on there, so you can actually confirm the pricing. Now you go there with something like Pica, and now you arm them with even more information after they've already found the information. Now you're feeding into their quest to be able to get everything right then and there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Paul and the team at Contractor Commerce, I think, are doing really incredible work, and it works. I mean, right? Like the actual platform does work. They've got a lot of happy consumers. I mean, I think the biggest pushback that we hear from contractors, right, is like, they're like, I don't necessarily know what the scope of the job is going to be. Maybe the homeowner doesn't accurately self-report what's going on. And as a result, it's tough, right? So I think there is a lot of pain there around how do we not undersell or overquote, right? Like when we have very little context. I mean, there are going to be better AI tools and diagnostic tools that I think will help streamline this process. But yeah, there's pros and cons.
Right.
Totally. Well, and that's, I remember we had Travis Ringy on with Pro Skills down in Arizona, and they had pricing on their website before contractor commerce was as popular as it is now. It was still around, but they were advertising their prices right up front, but in very clear text right underneath it. This assumes it is a straight change out. We don't have to adjust or modify any ductwork. And it goes down the myriad of problems that you might run into when you're swapping out a system. So, and I think that is necessary to make sure you have that disclaimer on there that, hey, we still require a visit, because if these other things are not in place, the cost is going to increase. The cost is going to change. That's why the range comes in and is really helpful. I know for myself, I was looking and shopping for window cleaning, and I went to the first site, no prices on there, bailed. Second site, no prices on there, bailed. Third site, prices were on there. It was a range, gave them a call, right? I think that for, like, to your point, David, if you don't have that information there available to that consumer, you're never going to bring them into the business.
I hear you. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and then it comes down to the value.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right?
Yeah. So
and
not everybody wants the
value,
pricing
which was everything else we talked about.
100%. Now we're full circle. So, look, I think you guys have some fascinating stuff going on at Pica. Super excited to see what your guys' journey. Obviously, meet you guys down in Service World next week. Shake your hands. Of course, if you want to get in touch with them, you can hit them up at withpica.com is their URL. They got the LinkedIn. We'll put these in the show notes after. linkedin.com/company/Pica-Earth. And if you want to reach out to David, because we're on Facebook right now, facebook.com/DZHAO0. Cool. Got that. We'll put that in the show notes for after. So Evan,
one part, I did want to get to before we ask our last question.
Yep.
The rebates, because this is something that the testimonials on the site talk about this, and I want to make sure that you get a chance to kind of brag a little bit about Pica and the things that you can do. But the ability to save contractors time as well as consumers money when it comes to rebates. I know that the bill's already been passed for the rebates that are coming out this year, and it's on a state level now. So regardless of who necessarily gets in, and I know Alec talked about this in his blog post as well, regardless of whoever gets elected, chances are they're not going to be able to repeal this in any way, shape, or form. So it's going to happen. So when it comes to those rebates, how does Pica help the contractors?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for what it's worth, I think 7 states have already, 6 or 7 states already are live. Another 7 have already, the money's approved. Another 13 have submitted applications. And once it goes to the state energy office, it can't be really clawed back. So really powerful. And also it's just good for everyone. It's good for the homeowner, good for the contractor. It's just a net good amount, a pool of money. But yeah, it's a great question, right? At the end of the day, rebates, permits, warranties, like everything is good, but it takes time. It's paperwork. And no one, I've yet to meet anyone who loves paperwork, right? And as a result, things get left behind, things get put into a backlog. I mean, we worked with a company that we were able to clear $100,000 plus in rebate value alone that was backlogged since the beginning of the year. And that's crazy. That's just straight free money that is sitting in some government entity's hands and could be in their bank accounts, right? And as a result, we were able to clear that in just a couple of weeks. So we do a couple of things with rebates. One, we help, if possible, to kind of upstream the rebate. So instead of the consumer having to file it after the sale has happened, and you basically just tell the consumer, hey, here's the link to go to, we'll send you some information, figure it out yourself. You actually get to offer that rebate as an off-the-top discount where applicable. It lowers the upfront price, which makes you more competitive on price. And then instead of you having to then go hire someone internally or outsource it to an external third party to actually file the rebates where you have to shift information back and forth, we just automatically file it for you, right? The money goes straight back into your bank account as a contractor in a very time-effective way. So this captures a lot of lost revenue, increases time efficiency, and also leads to an increase in close rate. Like actually, as a platform with both the rebates and the sales presentations, we're seeing a roughly 20% lift in close rate for the contractors we work with now across 22 states, both very large private equity backed, small residential mom and pops. But we're excited to kind of continue pushing the boundaries here, right? There are, as the state level rebates especially come out, there are some complexities there around how you calculate it, right? Model versus measured energy savings. How do you actually determine whether someone's household income is within the band for the income thresholded rebate? These are all problems that we are keeping our partners at the tip of the spear. Actually, was just in DC with my co-founder, meeting with politicians and senators directly involved in the rollout of these programs. And it is high priority for everyone to figure it out. So that's kind of our promise to our partners is we'll be your resource at the end of the day there.
Amazing. Well, I think that getting them $100,000 that was locked up in government hands straight into their bank accounts worth the price of admission right there. Right. Yeah. I mean, now that's obviously caveat. That's not for every single contractor out there.
Absolutely. I wish we could do it for everyone.
It depends on what the status of the contractor is. So no, that's fascinating stuff.
Well, and again, when it comes back to how can we as contractors, how can we become more efficient so that we can keep our costs down, right? Totally. This is another layer in there, and especially in states like California where the permitting process is so heavy, right? And there's so many different hoops that you got to jump through. If you can streamline that process even more and get faster at it and be better at it than your competitors, and be able to utilize your staff now in other areas of the business, it allows you to keep your costs down so you can become more efficient, be more profitable as a business, and offer better pricing to your customers.
Absolutely. That's a goal.
And hey, a 20% lift is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
So cool.
Love
it. Wouldn't be a show if we didn't ask you our last question. So David, what is one question that you wished people would ask you more, but they don't?
It's a really, really good question. I think there's this kind of fundamental, and this is very much sales HVAC specific, not kind of at large in my life, but there's always this kind of almost trade-off that we hear about between selling on value and selling on price, right? It's we see a lot of companies say, oh, I have to sell on value, or I'm too small, I just need to sell on price so I can keep my install crews busy. But I wish people asked me more, instead of like, how do I sell better on value? It's like, how do I balance the two, right? Like, how do I make something that's competitive on price, whether that be interesting financing options, right? Or leveraging really low cost financing, leveraging things like off the top rebates, being able to show bill savings. And these are retrospective, but still like framing the impact on ongoing costs. Like, what if I could do that and also continue to share the value of the brand, the fact that I've been around for 20, 30 years and I can guarantee a level of service and quality and customer experience that is very valuable to you as a consumer. And I think our platform does both, right? It allows you to do both. And I wish that more people would talk about that balance rather than an either or there.
So how can we strike a balance between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of really robust rebates and incentives, right? Coupled with almost like fairly creative financing, right? There's obviously this kind of rent to own model that's coming out. Folks like Goodleap are doing very nice, like no interest, no payment plans, which also help with that upfront cost at least and reduce that barrier. There's some really interesting kind of energy management programs that also help reduce the costs of your kind of monthly bills and your monthly payments. These are all crucial in helping you get to that lower cost, right? I mean, again, people don't have a ton of excess capital today. But doing it in a way that doesn't compromise the quality of the installation and the quality of the system and the quality of the ongoing relationship with the contractor. That I think is where actually contractors can really shine today in their existing process, right? If they don't have to do back of the envelope math, they can just go and really sell the company and sell themselves and sell the experience with the homeowner at the kitchen table. So that's the goal.
Blending it all together, and just got to use Pica to be able to help do it.
So
There you go. Perfect. Well, thank you, David.
I was just going to say, I love that whole idea and that whole concept of being able to utilize, the rebates as a value add, right? So not only are we now coming down in price to the consumer, but we're positioning it as we're going to do this work for you. So it's an extra value add, which makes us more valuable as a company. Plus, we're going to make sure that we take care of everything on the installation side, and it provides more consumer reassurance. So I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you for taking some time out of your day to chat with us.
Of course.
Perfect.
Thank you both.
No worries. Thank you. And until next time.
Cheers.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.